people talk about rights and privileges and whatnot, right? So there's been several recent decisions against Donald Trump. The ones that have come out so far have been in the civil court, where he's been criminally responsible for sexually assaulting a woman in New York, Eugene Carroll, and then defaming her multiple times. And yesterday, a jury awarded her in totality $83 million on top of the other $5 million plus that they awarded her in the first case. Donald Trump thinks the laws don't apply to him and his friends. And you think about it, most presidents, I don't know if any, and you gentlemen can help me out, other than Gerald Ford, who pardoned Nixon prior to him being tried. And the reason why he pardoned, to your point, Dr. Bellamy, we talking about total immunity. That's the reason why Gerald Ford pardoned Nixon, because presidents don't have immunity. No one in this country is above the law, as they say. Donald Trump even admitted, he's saying in one of his tweets that the president should have total immunity even if they cross the line. And even when it was his attorneys were asked, as you alluded to, should presidents be immune if they had SEAL Team 6 to go out and assassinate their opponent? And they said, well, yes, it's up to Congress to decide to impeach, unless they're impeached. It doesn't say that in the Constitution. And it says no one is above the law, right? And if the president is carrying out a military mission or something like that, we know that they're immune from that because they're acting in their official capacity. They're not doing it because they just have an axe to grind with this person. We don't commit president can't order an assassination of their enemy because they don't like them.
But Larry, Putin can.
Right.
Other one can.
Because he's autocrat.
All these autocrats can do that.
And they've done it.
And they're continuing to do it.
Right.
So what he's basically saying behind the scenes, so oftentimes it's not what he said, it's what he's meaning. What he said behind the scenes, because these people are speaking in abstract. I want to be an autocrat.
Right.
And I think once I become the president, because
I'm going to be, it's right out there.
I'm going to be the only president, so there's no other president behind me. That's what he's saying. This immunity is coming to me because when I get to the office again, I'm going to stop all this stuff.
Right.
And it's just going to be me. And so I want to have complete immunity on all these issues because that's how autocrats run.
Right, and it's the only way. So there's no discussion.
Yeah,
I have all the answers.
No responsibility, no accountability.
I mean, when he said when he was running, he said, "I and I alone can fix this." He alone can. So I want to stay with this, but I want to pivot a little bit. Right.
I can see it.
No, he looks like Rhodes. With Donald Trump has given more pardons to his friends. He has sold pardons, allegedly, to folks. I've never seen anything like it in my life, where so what if the rule of law that your friends get convicted of crimes and they're in bed with you? He's saying that he would pardon all of these prisoners of war, he calls it, these folks who were part of the insurrection. Hostages. Okay. He would pardon. That just scared the bejesus out of folks because you're basically saying that these folks can go out and commit any federal crime and they'd be immune from any prosecution. So how does that work? So if you go to the Congress and you assassinate one of the politicians there, that's a federal crime, because DC is governed for the most part, by the federal government, right?
It's a district, not a state.
Exactly. So if I assassinate someone there, it's the federal system that's going to prosecute me. The guy here is saying, I'm going to pardon you for your crimes as long as you do it on my behalf. Where are we going with this, gentlemen?
Well, the sad part about this, Larry, is that we have a legitimate, however illegitimate I think they believe of their ideology, but you have a legitimate Republican Party who's supporting this nonsense. In the past, this would have been he wouldn't even have been a thought.
Right.
All right. And then you have this segment of society who want their country back. You know what I mean? And I'm doing air quotes here. Supporting this stuff. We talk about Republicans. I do not agree with their platform. Maybe 50 or 60 years ago I would have, but not today. But I do respect a few Republicans. Right. Like Liz Cheney is one that comes to mind.
Right. You may not agree with her policy, but
I don't like her policy, but I respect her sincerity and her commitment
and her oath to office, right?
Exactly.
To preserve and protect the Constitution, right?
King is yours. I respect him.
Right.
Mitt Romney.
Right.
I respect him. I don't agree with their policy,
Right.
or their politics, but to actually just sit there and say, I'm going to bow to this guy
Kiss the
because
ring.
he has, the support of a large part of Caucasian men. This is all about white men rule, and he's speaking what they want him to
That's
hear.
right.
So I'm going to tell you something. If Trump loses this, which I do believe he will,
He will lose.
watch out, people, because that segment of society is going to be extremely angry, and they're going to do things and say things that's going to try. They're going to try to goat you into actually, hurting.
Right.
hurting
So
them.
I want to bring the
Hurt
caller
you.
back in for a second, but I think again, I'm trying to be a little optimistic here, right? Because a lot of the public rhetoric and whatnot, Donald Trump, now that things are getting into courtrooms, these judges in these courts are saying, wait a minute, there is one law. There's one rule of law, and it applies to everyone equally, other than his sycophants in the Supreme Court and the one Judge Cannon down in Florida, who is acting more like his defense attorney than a judge. But the rest of them are looking at, even a lot of his appointees are pushing back.
That's how they're trying to divide the system.
Right, and saying
All
what
right.
he's saying is rigged.
Yeah,
Right.
because what's happening is that when the founders put together the system, the judiciary was the arbitrary. All right, the judiciary was seen as the one entity
And
that could
independent.
actually independent that could actually operate between the two executive and legislative branches and keep those two branches from
check.
going after each other, keep it in check. But if I could actually divide the judiciary, I have just negated that point.
Right.
You see, so what's happening, and how are they doing it? They're actually tagging it. They're saying you are a Republican appointee.
right. You are
a
Bush or
Democrat
Trump.
appointee.
Right.
You are Trump. Listen, the judiciary is a judiciary.
Right.
It's not about who appointed you.
Yes.
Right.
It's about enforcing the law.
Right, and interpreting the law.
Yeah, so we should not allow them. And I sit them and I'm like, don't let them get away with this.
Yeah.
He's saying, well, this is a Trump appointee. We don't care.
Right.
It's irrelevant.
But
But he's a judge.
Right,
And that's how I
he's
see why.
actually discrediting them because he's saying that basically you are there to do my bidding and not to interpret the law. So if I'm looking at, I'm going to look at the law wherever it comes down, because if they're saying also that a lot of them are saying they're strict constitutionalists, well, there's nothing in there that says the president has total immunity, and a lot of this is just being dragged out. This is all a stall tactic on Trump's part, saying if I get to the finish line and I become president, then I pardon myself and everyone else who's part of my criminal enterprise. Afterward, caller, welcome to the round table.
Good morning, good morning. This is T. Michael from the People's Academy. How you guys doing? Happy New Year.
Happy New Year
Happy
to
New
you.
Year to
Happy New Year.
A few points I wanted to make about Donald Trump.
Just
First
a few.
of all, if you remember, quite some time ago in this program, I said Donald Trump was the new Hitler.
You and
know,
Dr.
Bob-
Bradley had it pegged. I swear, I played in
Right.
my head
I agree.
how intelligent
Right.
you guys are and how Dr. Bradley just forethink. He said Donald Trump was right. Everyone else is running for president. Donald Trump is running for king.
And the Republican Party
Right,
is not a Nazi party.
and a certain individual who has a program on this network was comparing him to Jesus. We're not going to get into that. The point I wanted to make too, that Donald Trump is two things. All he cares about is staying out of jail and
And money.
self-enrichment.
Right, money. Right.
Period.
Yeah.
But I need to bring it earlier on in the segment. I need to bring it back to Boston on some points that you guys made. That what's the difference now? Here is Donald Trump. They're selling their souls to align themselves with Donald Trump. He's doing things for self-preservation.
Mm-hmm.
They're aligning themselves. What's the difference between that and what has happened to the leadership of so-called leadership, electors especially of Boston, where you have a program who's addressing gun violence, mass incarceration, you name it, but they refuse to embrace it. And it's better for their constituents, their family members, etc. How do you justify that?
Well, like I said, it's the electric that justifies it. And I was saying, folks don't vote here because they feel like, okay, It's not bothering me. It's not my issue until it becomes my issue. We have a saying at MAMLEO: if you're here long enough, you'll get a turn. And the Rhodes was saying out there, Harriet Tubman's quote, I could have freed more slaves if they only knew they were slaves. We get complacent in our lives, and regardless to your economic status or where you're standing in life, we get complacent. There's very few people who are willing to fight for someone else, let alone they're not going to fight for themselves. They want someone else to do it.
Yes.
I saw that in my time as president of MAMLEO. I know Dr. Bradley sat in that same seat. Mm-hmm. There are folks who will always come there with their problems, but then even if you resolve their situation and you say to them, okay, well, now somebody else has got to turn. Oh, man, I'm too busy. I got to do this. I got to do that. So I don't know what the answer is to that, T. Michael. I know we've been discussing it. We've been a staunch supporter of the People's Academy since we met. But folks here, they're watching and complaining, honestly, about a lot of what's happening here in the city, in the state, about, people being pushed out, right? And, right, I mean, the People's Academy, the training that they could get would stabilize a lot of people. It's not going to solve all the problems, but it would stabilize a lot of people's financial situations where they can afford. $15 an hour is not going to keep you living in Boston. No, I'm sorry. $15 hour minimum wage. It's not going to cost you less than $1,000 a week. Is not going to keep you living in Boston.
Yeah. It may get you.
But Larry, when I'm sitting here, and I hate to keep beating the same drum, there's billions here already. Yeah. Most of these people do not live in Boston, vote here, or pay taxes here, but they're catered to on these construction, high-paying jobs. Another $61 billion is scheduled for infrastructure, and I haven't seen one plan set in place by these leaders and community-involved individuals structuring to be part of the build out.
Right.
But if I don't want you to have access to that money, all right, and what will you do to force me to make you have access to that money? You see, what I'm saying to you is that the issue, T. Michael, is value. They don't value us, and we're not doing anything to make them.
That's right.
You see what I mean? So we're not using their system against them to make them value us. Because I agree with you. There's no reason why a program like yours and other programs that are grassroots programs to promote, education for our youth, after years of being miseducated, to actually put them in a situation where they can actually afford a decent life.
Yeah.
There's no reason why you should not be supported. Hold on. You got it, Mike. Just let me hear me out. All right, but I want to make sure people understand this. I got to talk to the audience. I'm not really just talking to T. Mike. I'm talking to the audience who should be supporting you. The audience should be out in arms, saying we want our tax dollars to go to programs like this. But what you're getting crickets.
Right.
And when you get crickets, there's no reason, there's no motivation for politicians to respond. No. That's my point.
Go ahead, T. You want to weigh?
Yes, I want to add to what you're saying, Dr. Bradley, that it comes down, we too often focus on the right elected officials, what the right individuals are doing, when we have elected officials of color that specifically lives amongst us, but they're very silent, like a mouse in a bowl of flour.
But T. Michael,
they're getting their cheese.
Right, but here's and I say this numerous times. What's the incentive for someone who is not threatened of their job, right? Or they keep getting reelected for the most part, right? And so you can yell and scream all you want, but if it's not changing their situation, they're not going to help change yours.
Yep. And
can I answer? I'll answer it this way, Larry. The same incentive, the same reasoning that you, Dr. Bradley, Pastor Hobbs, all of us do what we do for the betterment of.
Right, but we're in a unique...
Because we show sympathy and empathy towards others.
Right, but what's the common thing with all of us as well? We're not politicians.
That's right. We're in a very unique situation.
Right.
All right, but I think the problem here, again, is that how do you motivate people to care for themselves? Because, I mean, because when I go around, look at Boston. I mean, if I can, my wife and I are going to the city to a show this evening, and I'm saying to myself, I know I'm gonna see a lot of work, a lot of construction work going on.
Yeah.
How many people that look like me is at that site? And that is appalling.
Yeah.
But what do we do to get people that look like us to say this is what we want?
Well,
this is what we demand.
Well, to that point, now that you would is. I thought there were benchmarks that would get us going in the right direction, right? Mm-hmm. One was I said, okay, the crime. I thought that, okay, people not being safe would galvanize folks to at least do something, right? Mm-hmm. To say, hey, we're not taking this anymore. That wasn't. So I said, okay, here it is, education. The children not being educated. Mm-hmm. That is going to be the calling for folks to come together, right? That didn't work. So I said, finally, something that impacts them, because this is going to impact them more than anything. Not being able to have to move out of the house, they're destabilizing their home situation. That is the catalyst that's going to get folks saying, hey, wait a minute, we need to come together, because I can't even afford to live where I've been living for the last 25 years. I am now having to move out of my home and I have nowhere to go. That's going to get us together. And that wasn't it. So I don't know what it is. Good.
No, that was a very interesting question that he asked. It's like, how do you motivate people to care for themselves?
Well, it goes to what we're talking. What I want to bring this back full circle to what we were talking about is about privilege, right? When I talk about Peter Navarro and Bannon, right, Steve Bannon, that the People's Academy. If any one of those folks who go through that, a lot of them that come through your program, I'm sure to you, not all of them, but some of them have had some issues, and this is their only opportunity. If they're convicted, if you're the average person convicted of a crime, you get sentenced. They cut you off as soon as the sentence is imposed. You don't get to appeal it from the outside. You go to jail. It's not monopoly. You don't collect $200. You go to jail. So again, all of these examples of the disparity, and this is when you hear folks like Trump and them talking about, the system is rigged.
It's rigged for them. It's rigged for the rich.
Right. Exactly. How many times have black people been talking about the system not working? How many people since this Innocence Project has come along? The system is rigged. Why you can't get the funding and the support for the People's Academy team? Because the system is rigged.
Well, Larry, part of the problem is when you have, this is what I'm saying, the People's Academy and T. Michael face something worse than racism, which is black people are in positions that not only undermines but throws the program and T. Michael under the bus. When they're coming out of their mouth saying that we don't support that.
But what price do they pay? What price do they pay, like I said, at the ballot box?
They don't pay the price, but it's the individuals whose family turn to the street, creates crimes to make a living. Some of them dies. Some of them goes to jail. They're the ones who suffers and pays the price.
Right. But this is what I'm saying. The politicians, okay, so this election cycle was the first time in a long time at the city council where you saw, folks who didn't run, so there were some open seats. But only two of the folks who were running were not reelected, and because in some cases their behavior was so egregious, right? But again, because if you look at now what we're talking about with Donald Trump, who has 91 charges against him in one, right, and yet he's the leading contender for the Republican to be the nominee for the Republican Party.
America likes their criminals.
Yeah, but that's easy, Larry, because the reason why Donald Trump is the number one. Look at look at Hitler. Mm-hmm. What he did was he convinced those individuals that if you put me into office, we're going to be in charge. I'm going to make your life better than those people. That's what he wants to do. So all of these supporters, they think they're going to be his foot soldiers. That's them. So that's why they support him. That's why the comment is made, let's take our country back to what it used to be, where the white folks were superior, so they thought, over black folks. That's what it's about.
No, you're not gonna get any pushback from me, and probably not my two brothers that are sitting here. But again, we how long, Dr. Browder? You and I have been doing this show for quite some time now. Mm-hmm. And we talk about all the time about people voting and getting engaged, civic engagement, right? And then we've seen our rights are being eroded across, not just here, but across the country. And we feel like, okay, again, we live in Massachusetts, right? Boston. We're not doing any better here than someone in some rural place in South Carolina or Georgia, where we know it's almost like you expect it in certain states, right? That's why I don't live in some of those, right? You try to find the lesser of the evils. But it all comes down to not galvanizing together.
That's right.
And working together.
I mean, I don't know what else to say because I think it's the bottom line. You know what I mean? We're not working together. They are, because they feel that, they established this. But this is in today's society.
Yeah.
If we go back to what we used to be, if they want their country back, there won't be a country.
But
because the young kids will not take this.
Right.
You know what I mean? They won't take it.
But you just, like you said, you just hit on it, and you said, like I said, we don't take the same approach to others, right? That there is a segment of this country that feels like their existence and their being is being threatened. And what are they doing? They're mobilizing. They're getting behind someone who's saying, I will go after those folk. I will go after your perceived enemies. All of this stuff, like I said, inclusion, right? DEI, all of that stuff, we're not going to talk about. Like I said, the Civil War, Nikki Haley said didn't happen. She doesn't know why the Civil War was. That was a part of her slavery, but she doesn't know why. That DeSantis, who was running, he said, hey, that slavery was a job program for black people. That's how they want this to be interpreted in history. They might as well say that those ships were part of Carnival Cruise Line's fleets, and we were going through the Caribbean on a cruise.
And they came here and delivered the Native Americans.
Yeah,
they saved their lives.
Yeah, right. Giving them smallpox and blankets So again, it really falls on us. I mean, I watched as part of a big reason why I left the police department, because I was working in the schools and seeing that it had really changed to where it wasn't really designed to help these kids.
No.
It wasn't designed to help them. It was designed to incarcerate them at some point when they become old enough to be incarcerated, right? That we're not getting in front and getting out in front of the behavior. Because all of us were children at some point, if we live to be adults. We know, and most kids may push back, but they want guidance.
Yes.
Well, we're speaking on education, and one of my feel about that is, Larry, and just thinking about my research on this in history. There was a time in our history where it was forbidden to educate a black person.
Yes.
You would be killed if you educated that individual, and reading and writing was out of the question. And the reason why is because it's impossible to enslave an educated individual.
Hello.
Because they're always thinking. So watch this now. So I can outright deny you the education because I can keep you stupid, which is what Donald Trump is doing around civic education, but that's another conversation. So now that you have freedom, how do I actually do the equivalent of that under the cloud of legitimacy? Think about it. All right. What I do is I put you in a situation where your education is, I miseducate you, I undereducate you, I put you in a deplorable situation.
And I deceive you about...
the miseducation of a Negro.
So there you go. And so what happens? So what happens?
It's a theme repeating. History repeating itself.
So what happens with that is that now that I can keep you uneducated, so I can enslave you not physically but mentally.
Yeah.
Right? And when I enslave you mentally, then I can inject into you that would be generational.
Yeah.
Generational.
Harriet Tubman again.
Right. No.
And so what ends up happening, I start getting people who will support that look like you, who will support people that look like Donald, because they don't know better.
Yeah.
Right.
You know what I mean? If my people had the knowledge, they would do
what they're saying. If you don't know better, you can't do better.
I'm telling you. So my point here is that education in America is calculated for black people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's calculated. Some of us get around it, because we see it and we pay for it and we actually struggle for it, and sometimes we get situations where people are feeling like, well, we got to make sure that this individual is educated. But my point here is that the free system for black people is not constructed to give them quality education.
Well, Malcolm X said it. He said, like, you cannot entrust your former slave master, oppressor, to be your educator.
No, there's a lot going on. So, T, give us a quick update on what's going on with the People's Academy. I know you've been working.
A few things. There is something really big being put together, but I would rather tell you offline and make the announcement once things get solidified.
Okay. You and I
need really good.
Get together because I need to do my headshot and all that stuff for that. I know we'll talk offline, but
yes.
Let's get together this week. I have nothing but time. Well, I shouldn't say that. I'm busy.
Yes, you would like the news, but I have to say this a little off.
Yeah.
The corner of Quincy and Warren, one side, you have Walgreens being shut down.
That's right.
From Ed Markey to others were out there aggressively protesting in favor of. But right across the street is a plot of land that's designated to save a lot of these kids, that they could take care of their family, community, and the economy.
Right.
But no one would walk across the street and say, here is a parcel to save so many lives.
Well, look
how things work.
Right, and saving Walgreens, it provides a service to the community, but the biggest benefactor is Walgreens, right? There's no economic growth for the people in the community. They are spending their money in Walgreens, and it's probably the fourth or fifth one that is shut down. But there's no real big benefit other than people being able to get their prescription close. And I'm not saying that's not a benefit, but I'm saying economically, there is no return for that investment that people spend.
Right. And right across the street is the plot of land. Right. And no one would look at it or advocate for it.
Yeah.
Think about how things work.
All right. Yeah.
Well, gentlemen, great show, and I will be listening.
All right, T, let's get together this week.
Let's get together, Larry.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Take care.
Thank you.
All right. Just a quick reminder as well. Our sponsor, Core Holbrook Guarantee Rate Mortgage, will be holding a home, looking to buy your first house, your first home. It's Saturday, February 17th, 2024, from 2 to 4:30 p.m. You must please RSVP at 2-1 homebuyer. I'm sorry, 2-17 homebuyered.eventbrite.com. That's 2-17 homebuyered.eventbrite.com. It's going to be held at the Boston Public Library at 1350 Blue Hill Avenue in Mattapan. That's again Saturday, February 17, 2024, from 2 to 4:30 p.m. This is a free event, but you must RSVP at 2-17 homebuyered.eventbrite.com. Again, sponsored by Guarantee Rate Mortgage. Our sponsor here, Cora Holbrook. I'll send this to you. Yes, absolutely. I'll send it to you and send it to Rhodes as well. So said, folks.
So Larry, man, I think the education piece is another one, man, because I think it's something that the parents of our community, although we may have single parent, we do have single parent households. I think it's important for us as a public servant to make sure they push that logic out to the parents, so the parents understand that the education of the children is extremely important, and their participation of that education is needed. You know, I know it's hard, but it's needed because that's how they.
How do you do that, Dr. Bradley, when you come from a home where like in your home, right? Everyone in our home, we do the same thing, right? Because I went through busing, and I know I had to fight to get an education, right? And it was the opportunity. You're right. It was the equalizer, right? I was the first black class president of South Boston High, and South Boston High, right? If people don't know the history of South Boston High, that was no small feat. But today, we have kids who can walk into any part of this city. I'm not saying anyone, but not to experience the problems. Like if you were black, you knew you didn't go to Carson Beach. You knew you didn't go over to South Boston. You didn't go to Andrew Square. You didn't go to certain parts. There were certain parts of the city that almost had borders, right, where you stayed out of if you wanted to.
Borders, yeah.
Exactly, right. And yet today, there's not an emphasis on education, and we spend almost 1.4 billion with a billion dollars.
I think, like you said, it's by design that the system, although we're spending more money, it's doing a worse job of educating our children.
Right, but Rhodes, your family is Haitian American.
Yes.
Your family came here.
Yes.
Dr. Bradley is another perfect example, and he talks about it, so I'm not putting his family business out there. Is that how his family. My mom went through high school, but back then education was not the same. And I say that because you always want better for the next generation than you had, right? Fair to say, gentlemen, or am I overstating this? Right?
You're right.
And so a lot of folks are coming here not to sell drugs, but because they want better for their families, right? And yet we have people who are born here who don't take advantage of an education system, right? Right now, folks are trying to get their kids in schools and whatnot here in Boston. I'm even seeing it in my town. I'm sure you're probably seeing it around. There is a swell of folks who are just trying to get a better start, for a better chance and opportunity for their families. Why are people here who I say have become Americanized don't see the value of what our parents saw? There's such a disconnect with working together in that collaboration of trying to get better for the next generation. Gentlemen, help me out here.
Okay, I will say, this desegmentation of society through media. Everyone now just has their own channel, their own, everyone can go into their own world and do whatever they want, from video games to, whatever, music videos, whatever it is, TikTok.
Yeah.
People have their own escape, so they don't necessarily have to interact. And then when they do it's always like, like a news story. Oh, an old person and a young person are working together on something. And it's just kind of like again, the idea of like it takes a village to raise a child. The village is not there, and that's why like our children aren't being educated. Because again, like one of the issues that we see here is they always saying, okay, the parents, because if the parents were advocating for their children, things would be done. Because I noticed that that's one of the fundamental issues that's with our community is the fact that the parents aren't advocating for their children. Like in my household, my parents made sure that, hey, there's going to be homework, right?
Right.
My son does anything at school, you let me know, and we'll take care of it.
Right.
And then apparently that dynamic of the relationship that people are supposed to have with the family and teacher aren't there anymore. As a matter of fact, some teachers are there being subvertently racist, trying to get the kids in trouble, putting them in harm's way, and writing them up for things that they shouldn't be written up for.
I think he's right. I think that's a part of it. The lack of advocacy for the child. I think another part of it is generational.
Yes,
I think
big part.
I mean, what happened is that our parents came in on the tail end of desegregation.
Yeah.
See, one of the things that I saw in Augusta during my early childhood was that I saw people who were well educated, working in the community, making businesses, developing businesses, and providing services to our people.
Yeah.
So I didn't see, and I lived in Augusta back in the 50s and the 60s, I didn't see Hispanic people. Everybody looked like us, all right? And so what I saw was a segregated, healthy section of our community. And then came civil rights. Then came desegregation. And so what desegregation, our desire to actually be accepted, mitigated the impression that I will receive as a child by seeing other people who were successful that looked like me. So what ended up happening was, when I didn't see that, it was a disconnect on what it took to get to that spot.
Yeah.
There lies the education.
No, I think you raise a valid point. I'm going to grab this call. But do you think that it was back then, too, as well, right? It was right there in front of you, right? Desegregation, like I said, we had these, but these borders that weren't walls, that people knew that they weren't going to be accepted, so they weren't trying to be part of a segment of population that didn't want anything to do with them. And now people are trying more to be like that or to be included in that, and it's still not going to be. But back then we just were accepting of it, so we gathered together and worked together because we knew all we had was each other.
Well, brother, if you can see it, you can be it.
Yes.
I have a PhD today because I saw other black men with that PhD.
Right.
I was a police officer in Boston and had 3 stars on my shoulders because I saw a black man, Billy Sylvester, who had those.
Okay, but here's the thing too. How many times when you were growing up that your parents said you can be anything you want, and we knew there were things that were not achievable?
Oftentimes.
Right. Like until President Obama became president,
oftentimes, but
it was almost off the table to think a black person could run.
But this was the caveat with my family, because my mother and father were not educated.
Mm-hmm.
My mother had a deep-rooted value for education. She said, you can be anything you want to be, but if there's something out there that you have never seen someone look like you be that, you can be the first.
Okay. Good morning, caller. Welcome to the roundtable.
Good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Pastor Dan. How are you, sir?
I'm fine.
You wanted to weigh in?
Oh, I want to weigh in so badly, but I'm only going to weigh in halfway.
Okay. Listen, you can't get baptized by just dipping your toe in the water.
You're right, but you also can't drown either.
Okay, good point.
Thank you. All right.
Happy New Year, too, as well, brother.
Happy New Year to you, and congratulations. And I thank you for your many years of service and dedication. And now, unfortunately, that you're retired, the real work begins.
It does.
You get to walk around the house and everything that you were waiting to do.
I already said my honeydew list has grown
exponentially. It's probably grown exponentially.
Absolutely.
It's going to grow some more.
Yeah.
So this in one respect, this is kind of a bittersweet call, because last evening my old business partner in the sound business gave me a call because he needed me and my expertise and second set of hands for a few minutes. Mm-hmm. So I had occasion to go to a high school where they're putting on a play. Mm-hmm. Now, here is the difference. Now, I'll just describe to you what I saw, and you tell me where the high school was.
Okay.
You have a play going on. It's Chicago, by the way.
Okay.
Where the cast was predominantly white. The Parents Association that supports the school is paying. Not only are they paying for the sound engineer to come in and do the job, provide the sound system, which is no small amount of money, but they also they're paying for the lunch between for the snacks for the crew. Mm-hmm. During the whole week of production, not to mention the whole thing. The Parents Association is paying for that, not the school. The school is allowing it.
Wellesley.
Now, where was this school? See if you can tell me what city was this school in.
I think it was in Wellesley.
I'm going to say anywhere but Boston.
That's a broad net, man. You're catching a huge net.
Oh, no, because I can eliminate Boston right off the bat. So
it was
anywhere but Boston.
It was a suburban school. I think it was someplace around Wellesley, in that area, somewhere in that area.
Okay. Oh, you're close. Brookline.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the issue is anywhere but Boston.
Right.
That is the issue.
And here's the thing, when you just talked about all of the things that these families, these parents, right, were ponying up and reaching into their pockets to pay for because they saw a value and they were seeing it as an investment, right? And we talk about the Boston Public Schools almost $1.4 billion budget. And yet we're seeing very little, if any, return other than maybe our exam schools here on that investment.
I think a lot more bureaucracy, a lot more people hired, and then less being done.
Right.
And here's the other sad thing: the people who are coming here from different cultures, they are not investing one dime in the school system that they're sending their kids to, and their kids are excelling. Their kids are reaching higher heights and deeper depths, that they're coming away with all the honors, and their parents are not putting one dime in the public school system that they're sending their kids to, but they are forcing their kids to get as much education out of it as possible, and then they're taking that education and going somewhere else.
No, I don't disagree with that. You know, the problem is that the people here who may be investing, and a lot of them are investing very little, right, are not even seeing the benefits that their kids would get from having them participate in the school, right? I mean, this is what I said. I've kind of pretty much thrown up my hands. You know, Dr. Bradley worked in the school system in Randolph. I've worked in the school system here in Boston as a police officer. And so we both have had bird's eye views of what is not happening. And in Boston, it is not a money problem. I know, like, Newton teachers of some of these suburban towns, their teachers have been on strike for pay or for better working
6 days
conditions.
now. Yeah.
Right.
And yeah.
Right.
But here's the problem. Coming out of the Newton school system, when you come out of the Newton school system, you come out a step above.
Well, that's what I'm
You
saying.
come out
Right.
higher
Right.
and better.
Right.
But once again, the same problem is they said, well, they have to fire 60 people. You're trying to tell me you can't find 60 people that are not dealing with the students?
Mm-hmm.
How much fat is in a school system?
Yeah.
I remember, dealing with the students. That's the commodity. That's the payoff.
Well, in Boston, when I started working in the schools for the police department, there were roughly 75,000 students. They're around 46,000, depending on any given day. Half of them are not even in the classrooms, right? So this doesn't get the attention that it deserves and that it needs. It's not a money problem here in Boston. What we have, because we don't have an elected school committee, right? And the school committee is the one that decides on the budget and that's sent over to the city council, and then it's basically a rubber stamp. Most people don't know that it's not the city council that puts the budget together for the schools. It's the school committee, right? Exactly. An unelected body that says that we're going to spend, these people who are part-time employees that are appointed by the mayor are the ones who decide how much money we're going to spend on our schools. Well, if that's the case, and we look at their performance record, they should all be fired because nothing is progressing in the school system. Dan, stand by to bring this other call in. Good morning, caller. Welcome to the roundtable.
I'm back.
Back from the depths. So go ahead.
Pastor Dan, speaking of retirement, are you retired? Officially, I am retired. Okay, so that gives you a lot more time to volunteer for the Trump campaign.
Jamal, you're cold. Jamal.
No comment on politics for right now.
No.
All right. I just hope I could. But seriously, folks, I just hope I could, because I wonder, of course, as a person such as yourself who has been supportive of in the past, and I don't want to get you in any political deep waters, but I'm saying, like, is anything looking any different to you now, or are you pretty, still, staunch in your are you holding the same positions that you were, let's say, a year or two ago?
A lot of my positions have changed, but we will talk about them in time. It's just that right now I'm focusing on the spiritual aspect of my church and my people, and trying to do things differently. The church theme for this year for our church is out with the old, in with the new. And so we really do need to be focusing on how we can change ourselves at a level where we understand. The problem, and this is one of the things I admire about you, Mr. Jamal, is the problem is not necessarily the fact that someone calls themselves a Christian. The problem is they don't act like what Christ did and how Christ acted. They're not portraying true Christianity. They're portraying somebody's concept where there's no, if you don't immediately have any respect for someone if you find out they're a Christian, because the only way you know is that they told you.
Well, I kind of I sum it up in this way, Dan. I say folks are out sinning on Saturday, grinning on Sunday, right? And so you find some of the biggest hypocrites in church. And I always tell people, if you're looking for perfection, please make sure you remove any mirror you come in contact with, because you're not going to find it in yourself. But I want to ask you, so I know your church is in Framingham. I'm not sure if that's where you live. How are the schools doing in the neighborhoods or the area that you worship in?
The schools are, they are hunkered down. There's more participation, but it's the same thing with the recent influx of everybody else. The schools are becoming more and more homogenized, and it's still just where's the representation of the positivity of the American black?
Right.
Who is going to show and lead and be the example for the future?
Right. So the week I retired was the week of January 5th. That week, right, at Madison Park. So that Tuesday, right, we had a young 16-year-old girl who had committed suicide. This is all Madison Park. On that Wednesday or Thursday night, we had 2 students there who were in a stolen car. The car flipped over and they were killed. On Friday at that same school, we had a teenager, someone in the school with a firearm, and it was an active situation there in the building. This is a school that is already, prior to the state talking about taking over the whole school system, was already in receivership and hasn't really progressed. And they actually have increased the number of students. I think it's, I want to be disrespectful, but it's almost like a holding pen for kids who are on their way to not bigger and better, but to the big house, because there's very little. And I had challenged someone, and I think it was Siddiqui, when he got a little deterred with me when I said I can recognize the kids, because you have a tale of 2 schools, not 2 cities, 2 schools, where you have they're connected by a wall. The O'Brien, which is an exam school, Dr. Bradley, and Madison Park, which is right next door. And we go there a lot of times for dismissal because there's problems at Madison Park. I can tell which kids, if I drove up and didn't see them coming out of the building, if they're standing there waiting for the bus, which kids are O'Brien kids and which are Madison Park. And they said, well, how? I said, because the O'Brien kids have book bags.
Right.
And folks say, oh, you're labeling. No, I'm just being realistic.
You're just saying what you saw.
The people I saw last night who were doing this play are coming away from that school with absolute real-life experience that they can take anywhere. And one person who is studying in law school but is proficient at stage management.
Right. So Jamal, you're a perfect example of someone who, you know, in Pasadena gave you a compliment, which well deserved. But a lot of people don't know that, you know, it was your education on the front end, right, that you received is why you are part of why you are as articulate as you are today. And see, you understand the value of that, correct?
Absolutely. I would say, the majority of, and you know, it's funny, people call me smart. I don't believe I'm actually smart. Like, I know some smart people, and, you know, it's in another way. I'm quick, is what it is. I can get new information, and, you know, you can give me a briefing on it, and then I could, you know, regurgitate back to you, you know, a decent synopsis of it or whatnot. But, I mean, you know, like, so for instance, Dr. Bradley, going through getting his doctorate and all that, right? You know, he wrote a dissertation and all. Like, you know, it would take me. I won't say I couldn't do it, but it would be a Herculean task for me to do that. And henceforth, you know, I just got my associate's degree. So smart, but like Neil deGrasse Tyson, no. You know what I mean? So I want to put expectations on it. But yes, my ability to read and spell and, you know, enunciate words properly, that happened basically because of my mother putting me in all the private schools that I was in early on, even though I was so bad and got kicked out of every single one of them. And also, too, I also have to salute places like the Elmer Lewis School, which also, through the use of art and drama, also, you know, kids had to do monologues. And at the Freedom House, I performed at the Ralph J. Bunch oratorical competition. And, you know, so there was a lot more things where people were striving to hone kids, you know, into into excellence, and it
Right.
wasn't seen as corny if
Right.
you talk good.
It was great. That's what I'm talking. And it wasn't, you talk white. But just on the side, I just said Dr. Brown and Rose. My daughter is an avid reader, right? With she 200, she wrote books. She loves to read because we instilled that in her. We go to the library almost every Saturday to return books and get more, not to get video games and things of that nature. Now we give them time for that, but the bulk of their time right now is learning so that they can prepare themselves. Right? I mean, when I'm sitting there looking at my daughter, it's my oldest, sitting on a couch with a book and not a laptop, not an iPad, not a game, that's it. I know that we're helping to shape her future, right?
How about Larry? Not a mirror and a makeup kit.
Right. But also, because see, and we're also engaging in that. We read to them at night. I say it because that's an investment in our children, right? And we don't see those things. The laptop, and a lot of times folks give that to their kids. That's the babysitter.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is my question to that.
Well,
my question to that is how did you get there? How did she get there?
Because of my wife is an educator, and we valued education.
That's the point.
But that's what I'm talking about. But you can't teach what you don't know, right? And for me, why education is so paramount, because I had to fight just to get into the building where it was being given out, during busing.
But now you also know the value of it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And just by being a father, being a loving dad, you want your child to experience that same value.
Right.
You know where she can go without. I go back to my earlier comment.
Right.
In the past, in our history, it was forbidden to read or write.
Right.
People would get killed.
Yeah.
They would kill you, both the person who taught the individual and the
and the
individual
person
who
who
learned. Or that they would take you out.
Yeah.
And the reason for that
Right.
is that education, it's impossible to enslave someone who's educated.
Right.
And so that's the issue.
But also, it would go against the narrative that they were saying that, again,
Yeah,
back then, the
yeah.
slave's too dumb to
Yeah,
learn.
I got
That's
it.
why-
I got it.
Right.
Yeah.
But my point here is this right here, because what happened is that education becomes the seed that will prevent the enslavement of future generations.
Right. And that learning is the fertilizer.
There you go.
Right.
That's the
Right. Gentlemen, we got about 2 minutes. I want to give each one of you a minute. Start with you,
Okay,
Dave.
well, congratulations on getting your associate's degree. That's a big thing.
Mm-hmm.
I have one of those as well.
Mhm.
The other issue is the dissertation part is not easy. My dissertation, in order for me to reach to get higher in the ministry, required 4 rewrites.
Mm-hmm.
So you're absolutely right. It is hard to do such things, and in order to be accepted. So, but doing it is a good thing. 'Cause
Yeah.
when you come out of it, you learn more about yourself than they learn about you in that dissertation.
Well, and Jamal, I mean, I'm gonna let you. I hop back to when the Boston Globe did that study in 50. The generation, the wealth of Black Boston.
$8 versus
Right. I knew
250,000.
immediately it was real estate because I got into real estate early on. At 19, I bought my first home, so I knew they weren't talking about a job someone had. But the mindset of a lot of folks was, oh, they got a job at so and so. No, it's not a job. That's the generational wealth because we were
lied to.
Yeah, we've been
lied to.
Right, but we've set our
We were
children
never
up.
taught to invest.
But
We were
home
taught to
ownership,
save.
right, is that they now can inherit that home that we have that gives them a leg up. That renting for 30 years, there's no equity built up. Jamal, you get the last word.
All I was going to say is, really for this next thing, I hope that we get, Deval Patrick is leaving.
No, leaving where?
He's going back, leaving Boston because he was at Bain Capital, and he's going back to Chicago to another multi-billion with a B investment firm. So that's also interesting to me and looking at where the money is. So yeah, next segment. I don't know if you got somebody coming on or whatever, but I'll stay tuned in.
Okay. All right, gentlemen. You've been listening to At the Round Table with MAMLEO. We'll take a break and we'll be back.
So where you get the hat from, Doc?
Hustle real hard, hustle so if I never see ya, never get the chance to meet ya. No, I came up from the bottom, always rooting for the underdog.
I wrote 300 songs in 1 year. Boogie will tell you I'm on it.
I got unreleased songs for days, they don't want it. Eat any MC in the game. It ain't a challenge if your music reflects who you are, then you's a coward. I can see through the lies you ain't living what you spitting. If your money's so long, why your dog's in prison? Why your baby mom's stripping, why your mom's still living in that same broken home that you used to sell piffin'. You ain't gotta lie to me to sell me a track. You ain't gotta rock fake jewels or walk around strap. I respect artists getting money, but love them for spitting crack. And the fact that one track can move a family out the trap. It's a dream for us lost souls brought up in the mix. I'm motivated by the artists coming out in my midst. And the artists that paved the way when I didn't exist. Music's a skyscraper, I'm just trying to add a couple bricks.
This is for the dreamers. They say I am a dreamer. Cause I still believe that anything is possible as long as you work hard.
Hustle real hard, hustle real hard. Hustle real hard, hustle
So if I never see ya, never get the chance to meet ya, no, I came up from the bottom, always rooting for the underdog.
I always dreamed